In a small town in Maine where everyone knows everyone, where secrets are whispered over coffee at the local diner and gossip travels faster than the winter wind, something happened that no one could have predicted. This is the story of Eleanor Whitmore, a 90-year-old woman who lived alone in a Victorian house at the end of Maple Street, a woman known for her kindness, her homemade apple pies, and her gentle smile. But on a cold November morning, Eleanor picked up her rotary phone and made a call that would shake the entire community to its core. This is a story about guilt, about secrets buried so deep they become part of your bones, and about a confession that revealed the unthinkable. What you're about to hear is dark, twisted, and based on the kind of truth that reminds us we never truly know the people around us. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our viewers around the world. And if you enjoy dark, twisted stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We bring you new macabre stories every week, and trust us, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive into Eleanor's confession. The morning of November 12th, 2023, began like any other in Bridgewater, Maine. The sky was a slate gray, heavy with clouds that promised snow. The temperature had dropped to 28 degrees overnight, and frost clung to the windows of the houses along Maple Street like crystalline spiderwebs. The bare branches of oak and maple trees swayed in the bitter wind, their skeletal fingers scratching against the pewter sky. Eleanor Whitmore woke at 5:30 a.m., as she had every morning for the past 70 years. Her bedroom was cold, despite the ancient radiator hissing in the corner. She sat up slowly, her joints protesting with familiar aches, and reached for the thick wool cardigan draped over her bedpost. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis, trembled slightly as she buttoned it over her thin cotton nightgown. She moved through her morning routine with the precision of ritual: wash her face with cold water, brush her silver hair exactly 100 strokes, prepare a pot of Earl Grey tea. The kitchen was dim, illuminated only by the weak light filtering through lace curtains. The house smelled of old wood, lavender sachets, and something else, something faint and unsettling that had always lingered in the walls, though Eleanor had long since stopped noticing it. She sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd eaten breakfast for 63 years, and stared at the black rotary phone mounted on the wall. Her tea grew cold in its delicate china cup, untouched. Outside, a crow cawed from the barren elm tree in her front yard, its harsh cry cutting through the morning silence. Eleanor's mind drifted, as it often did these days, to memories she'd tried to bury, memories of a different time, a different version of herself. The weight of them pressed against her chest like stones. She thought about her late husband Thomas, dead now for 12 years. She thought about her daughter Christine, who called once a month from Seattle, their conversations awkward and brief. She thought about the basement, always the basement. At 7:15 a.m., Eleanor stood, her decision made. She walked to the phone with steady steps, each footfall creaking on the old hardwood floors. Her hand, surprisingly steady now, lifted the receiver. She dialed 911, the rotary dial clicking methodically back into place after each number. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was young, female, professional. Eleanor cleared her throat. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, almost serene. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I live at 47 Maple Street. I need to confess to something I did a very long time ago. I need you to send the police. There was a pause. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? No, dear, but I'm 90 years old, and I won't be here much longer. It's time someone knew the truth. What truth, ma'am? What do you need to confess? Eleanor closed her eyes. I killed someone. Actually, I killed 3 people. Their bodies are in my basement. They've been there for 47 years. The dispatcher's professionalism cracked slightly. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Officers are being dispatched to your location right now. Are you saying there are human remains in your home? Yes, dear. 3 of them. I'm not going anywhere. I'll put the kettle on for the officers. It's cold out there. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of the Victorian house, their sirens silent but their lights painting the grey morning in alternating red and blue. Officers Michael Chen and Sarah Brennan approached the house cautiously, their hands resting on their service weapons. The house looked like something from a storybook. 3 stories of weathered clapboard painted dove grey, with white gingerbread trim and a wraparound porch. A porch swing moved slightly in the wind, creaking on rusty chains. Eleanor opened the door before they could knock. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, her body bent slightly with age. She wore a floral dress under her cardigan, sensible orthopedic shoes, and a string of pearls. Her face was deeply lined but still held traces of the beauty she'd possessed in youth. Her blue eyes were clear, sharp, and utterly calm. Officers, please, come in. I've made tea. Chen and Brennan exchanged glances. This wasn't what they'd expected. They'd responded to plenty of calls from elderly residents, confused individuals, people in crisis. This woman seemed neither confused nor distressed. Mrs. Whitmore, we received a 911 call from this address, Brennan said carefully. You mentioned something about human remains. Yes, dear. In the basement. Would you like me to show you, or would you prefer to search yourselves? I understand you have procedures. Chen keyed his radio. Dispatch. We're 1023 at 47 Maple Street, requesting additional units and detectives. The homeowner is cooperative but making claims about historical remains on the property. Within the hour, the house was swarming with law enforcement. Detective James Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran of the Maine State Police, arrived with a forensics team. Eleanor sat calmly in her living room, sipping tea from her china cup, as officers moved through her home. The basement door was in the kitchen, a thick wooden door with a modern deadbolt that seemed out of place in the old house. Rodriguez approached Eleanor, who watched him with those unnervingly calm eyes. Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to tell me exactly what we're going to find down there. Eleanor set down her teacup with a soft clink. 3 bodies, detective. A man and 2 women. They've been there since October 1976. The man's name was Leonard Pruitt. The women were Diane Keller and Susan Marsh. I killed them all. Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold house. Why? Why did you kill them? Eleanor's expression didn't change. Because they were going to ruin everything. Because they knew too much. Because I had no choice. Everyone has a choice, Mrs. Whitmore. She smiled then, a small, sad smile. Do they, detective? Do they really? The forensics team descended into the basement, their flashlights cutting through decades of darkness. The basement was unfinished. Dirt floors, stone foundation walls slick with moisture. The air was thick with the smell of earth and decay and something chemical. In the far corner behind an old coal furnace, they found what Eleanor had described. 3 graves. Shallow, methodical, carefully hidden. The bodies had decomposed significantly over 47 years, but the cold Maine earth and the basement's consistent temperature had preserved enough for identification. Dental records would confirm what Eleanor had already told them. Leonard Pruitt, age 42, Diane Keller, age 31, Susan Marsh, age 28. All had been reported missing in October 1976. All were presumed to have left town. None of them had left at all. Rodriguez sat across from Eleanor in her living room while his team processed the scene. The house had been cleared of other occupants, declared a crime scene. Eleanor didn't seem bothered by any of it. Tell me what happened, Rodriguez said. Start from the beginning. Eleanor nodded as if she'd been waiting 47 years to tell this story, and perhaps she had. It started with Thomas, my husband. We'd been married 23 years by then. We lived in this house with our daughter, Christine. She was 10 years old. On the outside, we were perfect. The ideal American family. Thomas worked as an accountant. I volunteered at the church, baked for the school fundraisers, hosted ladies' luncheons. Everyone thought we were wonderful. She paused, her gaze distant. But Thomas had a secret. He was embezzling money from his clients. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over several years. He was very clever about it, routing funds through fake accounts, forging documents, and I knew. I'd known for years. I helped him hide it because I was terrified of what would happen if the truth came out. We'd lose everything. Our home, our reputation, our daughter's future. Rodriguez leaned forward. What does this have to do with the 3 people in your basement? Leonard Pruitt was Thomas's business partner. He discovered what Thomas was doing. Leonard was a good man, honest, and he was going to report it to the authorities. He came to our house on October 15th, 1976 to confront us. He told us he'd already told 2 people about what he'd found. Diane Keller, his secretary, and Susan Marsh, a CPA who'd helped him analyze the books. Eleanor's voice remained steady, detached, as if she were recounting a recipe rather than a triple homicide. They were coming to the house the next day, all 3 of them, to collect evidence before going to the police. Thomas was panicking, talking about running away, but I knew we'd never make it. We'd be caught, and Christine's life would be destroyed. So you killed them, Rodriguez said quietly. I poisoned them, Eleanor corrected. I invited them for dinner. Leonard, Diane, and Susan. I made a lovely beef bourguignon. I put enough potassium cyanide in the wine to kill them all within minutes. Thomas didn't even know I was going to do it. He was weak, you see. He couldn't make the hard decisions. The matter-of-fact way she described murder was deeply unsettling. Rodriguez had interviewed hundreds of killers in his career, and most of them showed some sign of emotion, remorse, anger, justification, or psychopathy. Eleanor showed nothing but calm acceptance. Where did you get cyanide? My father was a jeweler. He used it for gold plating. I'd kept some after he died. I knew it might be useful someday. What happened after they died? They collapsed at the table. It was very quick, which was merciful, I suppose. Thomas vomited in the kitchen. He couldn't handle it, but I stayed calm. I had to. I made him help me carry the bodies to the basement. We buried them that night, dug the graves by hand. It took us hours. Then we cleaned everything, burned their clothes in the furnace, disposed of their cars in different locations over the following weeks. We told everyone who asked that they'd mentioned leaving town. Leonard for a new job opportunity. The women following him. No one questioned it too much. People disappeared back then, started fresh somewhere else. Rodriguez's stomach turned. And you just continued living here? Above 3 corpses? Yes, we had no choice. Selling the house would have raised suspicions. Moving would have raised suspicions. So we stayed. Thomas never went into the basement again. He developed a drinking problem, became a shadow of himself. He died in 2011. Heart attack. The guilt ate him alive, detective. But not me. Why not? Rodriguez asked, genuinely curious now. Why didn't the guilt eat you alive too? Eleanor met his gaze directly. Because I did what I had to do to protect my family. Christine grew up happy, went to college, became a successful architect. She never knew what her parents did for her. Thomas embezzled that money to pay for her education, to give her opportunities, and I killed 3 people to make sure she got to keep those opportunities. That's not protection, Mrs. Whitmore. That's murder. Those 3 people had families too. Lives, dreams, futures. For the first time, Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. Her eyes glistened. I know. I think about them every single day. Leonard had a wife and 2 sons. Diane was engaged. Susan had just started her career. I took all of that from them, from their families. I'm not delusional, detective. I know what I am. Then why confess now? Why, after 47 years? Eleanor smiled sadly. Because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. The doctor gave me 3 months, maybe 4. And I realized that if I died without telling the truth, those families would never have closure. Leonard's wife passed away 5 years ago, still not knowing what happened to her husband. Diane's fiancé never remarried, spent his whole life wondering if she left him. Susan's parents searched for her until they died. They deserved to know. Even if the truth is horrible, it's better than wondering forever. Rodriguez sat back, processing everything. What about your daughter? Christine, how do you think she'll react when she learns what you did? The question hung in the cold air of the living room. Eleanor's face crumbled then, the carefully maintained composure shattering. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks, cutting tracks through powder and age. She'll hate me. She'll realize that her entire life was built on blood and lies, that her education, her success, everything she has was paid for with stolen money and murder. It will destroy her. Then why tell the truth if you knew it would destroy her? Because she deserves to know who her parents really were. Because those families deserve justice, even if it comes 47 years late. And because I need to face what I've done before I die, I need to be held accountable. The investigation that followed was extensive. Forensics confirmed the identities of all 3 victims through dental records and DNA analysis. The medical examiner found traces of cyanide in the remaining bone marrow, confirming Eleanor's account. Records from 1976 corroborated her story. Leonard Pruitt, Diane Keller, and Susan Marsh had all disappeared within days of each other in October 1976. Missing persons reports had been filed, but without evidence of foul play, the investigations had eventually gone cold. The surviving family members were contacted. Leonard Pruitt's sons, now in their 50s, broke down when they learned what had happened to their father. Diane Keller's elderly fiancé, now 75, said simply, I always knew she wouldn't have just left. She loved me. Something terrible must have happened. Susan Marsh's sister, who'd searched for her for decades, said through tears, at least now I know, at least now I can stop looking. Eleanor was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Despite her age and terminal illness, the district attorney pushed for prosecution. Justice delayed is not justice denied, he told reporters. These families have waited 47 years for answers. They deserve to see Eleanor Whitmore held accountable for what she did. But the case took an unexpected turn during the preliminary hearings. Eleanor's court-appointed attorney, a young public defender named Marcus Lynn, began digging deeper into the circumstances of 1976. What he found changed everything. Lynn discovered that Thomas Whitmore hadn't just embezzled money for his daughter's education. He'd been embezzling to cover gambling debts to a local organized crime family. The Constantino family, based in Boston, had controlled most of the illegal gambling operations in Maine during the 1970s. Thomas owed them over $300,000, a debt he couldn't possibly repay legitimately. More shocking still, Lynn found evidence that the Constantino family had known about Leonard Pruitt's discovery of the embezzlement. They'd sent an enforcer to Bridgewater in October 1976 with orders to eliminate anyone who might expose Thomas and, by extension, their operation. That enforcer's name was in FBI surveillance reports from the era. Vincent "Vinny the Knife" Delgado, a known hitman with at least 12 suspected kills. Lynn uncovered phone records showing that someone from the Constantino family had called the Whitmore residence 3 times in the week before the murders. He found a witness, a former low-level member of the organization, now in witness protection, who testified that Delgado had bragged about handling a problem in Maine in late 1976, though he'd never specified details. The pieces fell into place in a way that stunned everyone, including Eleanor. During a tense meeting at the county jail, Lynn laid out his findings to Eleanor. She sat across from him in her orange jumpsuit, looking small and frail under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to tell me the truth. The whole truth this time. Were you contacted by the Constantino family before the murders?" Eleanor was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, tell me everything." 2 days before Leonard, Diane, and Susan were supposed to come to the house, a man called. He didn't give his name. He said he knew about the embezzlement, about Thomas's debts, about the investigation. He said that if the truth came out, Thomas would be killed to silence him. "And so would I, and so would Christine." Lynn leaned forward. "What did he tell you to do?" "He said I had 2 choices. I could let Leonard go to the police, and my entire family would be killed within a week, or I could handle it myself. He said if I took care of the problem, the debt would be forgiven. My family would be safe. He ordered you to commit the murders." "He didn't order. He gave me a choice." "But what kind of choice was it really? Kill 3 people or watch my 10-year-old daughter be murdered?" Lynn sat back, his mind racing. This changed everything. Eleanor Whitmore wasn't just a cold-blooded killer protecting her social status. She was a mother forced into an impossible situation by organized crime, acting under duress to save her child's life. "Why didn't you tell the police this in 1976, or when you confessed?" Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "Tell them what? That the mob threatened me? They would have killed Christine anyway, just to tie up loose ends, and who would have believed me? I had no proof, just a phone call from an unnamed man. Thomas was already complicit in the embezzlement. We had no credibility, no protection. The only way to keep Christine safe was to do what they said and never, ever speak of it. Why didn't you mention this when you confessed?" "Because I thought they were all dead. The Constantino family was dismantled in the 1980s. Most of them went to prison or were killed by rivals. I thought the threat died with them, and I wanted to take full responsibility for what I did. I made the choice to kill those people, even if it was under duress. I pulled the trigger, so to speak. I deserved to be punished." The revelation sent shockwaves through the case. The prosecution's narrative of a cold, calculating killer crumbled. In its place emerged a far more complex story. A mother trapped between impossible choices, forced to commit horrific acts to protect her child from organized crime. Public opinion shifted dramatically. What had seemed like a clear-cut case of premeditated murder now appeared to be something far more ambiguous. The court of public opinion divided sharply. Some argued Eleanor was still a murderer who'd taken 3 innocent lives. Others saw her as a victim herself, forced into an impossible situation where any choice led to tragedy. The trial was set for March 2024, but Eleanor's health deteriorated rapidly. The cancer spread aggressively, and by January, she was hospitalized and placed on palliative care. It became clear she wouldn't live to see trial. In her final weeks, Eleanor received an unexpected visitor. Christine, her daughter, who'd flown in from Seattle the moment she learned about the confession. Their meeting was private, but nurses later reported hearing both women sobbing for over an hour. Christine spoke to reporters afterward, her eyes red but her voice steady. "My mother made terrible choices. She took 3 lives. Nothing can excuse that. And those families have every right to hate her. But she did it because she thought she was protecting me. She lived with that guilt every day of her life. I'm angry. I'm devastated. I'm furious that my whole life was built on lies. But she's still my mother, and I can't abandon her now." The surviving family members of the victims were divided in their responses. Leonard Pruitt's sons issued a statement saying they could never forgive Eleanor, but understood she wasn't the only guilty party. Diane Keller's former fiancé said simply, "I just wish Diane had never gone to that house." Susan Marsh's sister was more forgiving. "I think Eleanor Whitmore was a victim too, in a way. The real monsters were the men who put her in that position." On February 8, 2024, Eleanor Whitmore died in her hospital bed with Christine holding her hand. She was 90 years old. The charges against her were formally dismissed due to her death, leaving the case legally unresolved. But the story didn't end there. A week after Eleanor's death, Detective Rodriguez received a package at his office. It was postmarked 3 days before Eleanor died. Inside was a handwritten letter and a manila envelope containing documents. The letter read, "Detective Rodriguez, if you're reading this, I'm dead. There's something I didn't tell you, something I couldn't risk saying while I was alive, because it would have put Christine in danger. The man who called me in 1976 was named Vincent Delgado, but he wasn't working alone. The person who actually ordered the murders, who knew about Thomas's embezzlement and set everything in motion, was someone much closer to home. It was my brother-in-law, Robert Whitmore, Thomas's older brother. Robert was a lawyer who did work for the Constantino family. He's the one who connected Thomas to their gambling operation in the first place. When Leonard Pruitt discovered the embezzlement, Robert knew it would expose not just Thomas, but his own connections to organized crime. He arranged for the Constantinos to threaten me, knowing I would do anything to protect Christine. Robert is still alive. He's 87 now, living in Portland under his own name. The documents in this envelope prove his connection to the Constantino family and to the murders. Bank records, legal documents, correspondence. I've kept them hidden all these years as insurance, in case he ever came after Christine. I'm telling you this now because justice matters. Those 3 people deserve justice, and it shouldn't end with me. Robert Whitmore orchestrated their deaths just as surely as I carried them out. I know this doesn't make me innocent. I still chose to poison those people. I still buried them in my basement. I still lied for 47 years. But the whole truth deserves to be known. Eleanor Whitmore. Rodriguez stared at the letter for a long time. Then he opened the manila envelope and began reviewing the documents. What he found was damning. Correspondence between Robert Whitmore and known Constantino family members, bank records showing payments, legal documents proving Robert had represented Constantino interests throughout the 1970s. Most shocking of all was a handwritten note from October 1976 in Robert's handwriting. Problem handled. Thomas and family secured. No further action needed. The investigation reopened, this time focusing on Robert Whitmore. At 87, he was in a nursing home in Portland, his mind sharp but his body frail. When confronted with Eleanor's evidence, he initially denied everything, but as the weight of documentation mounted, his story began to crumble. In a final interview conducted in April 2024, Robert Whitmore, facing charges of conspiracy to commit murder and racketeering, made his own confession, but his version of events contained one final, devastating twist. Eleanor's letter was mostly true, Robert said, his voice raspy with age. I did work for the Constantinos. I did connect Thomas to their gambling operation, and yes, I arranged for them to contact Eleanor when Leonard Pruitt became a problem. Rodriguez waited, sensing there was more. But there's something Eleanor didn't know. Something I never told anyone. The Constantinos never actually threatened to kill Christine. I made that up. I'm the one who called Eleanor and told her that her daughter would be killed if she didn't handle the situation. I used her fear to manipulate her into committing murder. The room went silent except for the soft whir of the recording equipment. Why? Rodriguez finally asked. Why would you do that? Robert's laugh was dry, humorless. Because I needed Leonard, Diane, and Susan dead, but I couldn't risk doing it myself. I was already under suspicion for my mob connections. One more body connected to me and I'd go down. But Eleanor, she was perfect. No criminal record, no connections to organized crime. Just a desperate mother. She'd do anything to protect her child. And she'd never tell anyone because she'd be too ashamed of what she'd done. So you used her. I manipulated her into becoming a murderer, yes, and she never knew. She thought she was saving her daughter's life, but Christine was never in danger. The Constantinos didn't care about Thomas's family. They just wanted their money. I could have arranged protection, worked out a payment plan, done 100 things to resolve the situation without anyone dying, but that wouldn't have solved my problem. I needed those 3 dead to protect myself. Rodriguez felt sick. Eleanor lived with that guilt for 47 years. She died believing she'd made an impossible choice to save her daughter, and it was all a lie. Yes, Robert said simply. And I let her carry that burden because it kept her silent. As long as she believed she'd done it to protect Christine, she'd never talk. She'd take the secret to her grave. But she didn't, Rodriguez said. She confessed, and she exposed you in the end. Robert nodded slowly. I underestimated her. I thought the guilt would keep her quiet forever. I didn't account for terminal cancer and a dying woman's need for redemption. Eleanor Whitmore outsmarted me in the end. From beyond the grave, no less. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Robert Whitmore was charged with 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, along with numerous racketeering and fraud charges. At 87 and in failing health, he accepted a plea deal, life in prison with no possibility of parole, in exchange for a full confession and testimony about his connections to the Constantino crime family's operations in Maine. He died in prison 6 months later, leaving behind a legacy of manipulation, betrayal, and murder. The case of Eleanor Whitmore became one of the most studied and debated criminal cases in recent Maine history. Legal scholars argued about culpability, moral philosophers debated the ethics of impossible choices, and criminal psychologists analyzed the psychological impact of living with such profound guilt. But perhaps the most significant impact was on the families. Leonard Pruitt's sons, Diane Keller's former fiancée and Susan Marsh's sister all issued a joint statement in the wake of Robert's confession. We've learned that there were no simple villains in this case, except for Robert Whitmore. Eleanor Whitmore took 3 lives, and that will never be okay. But she was also a victim of his manipulation and lived with unbearable guilt for nearly 50 years. We choose to remember our loved ones, Leonard, Diane, and Susan, and find peace knowing the full truth has finally emerged. Sometimes justice comes late, and sometimes it's complicated, but it still matters. Christine Whitmore donated her mother's house to a non-profit organization that helps victims of domestic violence and coercive control. The basement was filled in, blessed by clergy from multiple faiths, and the house was renovated into a shelter. A plaque in the garden honors Leonard Pruitt, Diane Keller, and Susan Marsh, bearing the inscription, "In memory of 3 lives lost to violence and manipulation. May their truth bring healing." As for Eleanor herself, she was buried in a small cemetery on the outskirts of Bridgewater. Christine chose a simple gravestone with a simple inscription, Eleanor Margaret Whitmore, 1833-2224, mother, killer, victim. May the truth finally set her free. The case raised profound questions that continue to resonate. How much guilt should someone bear for acts committed under duress? Where does responsibility lie? When choices are made under manipulation and threat, can someone be both perpetrator and victim? And how do we measure justice when the truth comes decades too late? These questions have no easy answers. They force us to confront the uncomfortable reality that human morality is rarely black and white, that good people can commit terrible acts, and that evil often works through manipulation rather than direct action. In the end, Eleanor Whitmore's confession did more than expose a 47-year-old crime. It revealed the complex web of circumstances that can lead ordinary people to commit extraordinary acts of violence. It showed that behind every true crime story are layers of human psychology, societal pressure, family dynamics, and moral complexity that resist simple categorization. Detective Rodriguez, who worked the case from beginning to end, offered perhaps the most thoughtful reflection in an interview conducted 6 months after Robert Whitmore's death. "I've been a detective for 23 years. I've seen every kind of crime, every kind of criminal. But Eleanor Whitmore's case taught me something I'd never fully understood before. Sometimes the person who pulls the trigger isn't the most guilty party. Sometimes the real monster is the one who puts the gun in their hand and convinces them they have no choice but to use it." He paused, choosing his words carefully. Eleanor made a choice to kill 3 innocent people. That will never be right, and those victims deserved so much better. But she was also manipulated, threatened, and used by someone who understood exactly how to exploit a mother's love for her child. In my mind, there were 4 victims in this case, not 3. The difference is that one of the victims also became a killer. The story of Eleanor Whitmore serves as a chilling reminder that we never truly know the secrets our neighbors carry, the burdens they bear, or the choices they've made in moments of desperation. It reminds us that true crime is rarely as simple as good versus evil, that justice can be both necessary and insufficient, and that even at 90 years old, facing death, the human need for truth and redemption remains powerful. On a cold November morning, an elderly woman picked up a phone and made a confession that no one could have imagined. In doing so, she set in motion a chain of events that would reveal not just one crime, but multiple layers of criminality, manipulation, and moral complexity. The truth, as it turned out, was darker than anyone suspected, but it was also more complicated, more human, and more tragic than a simple story of murder could ever convey. And somewhere in Bridgewater, Maine, in a house that was once the site of unimaginable horror, but is now a place of refuge for those fleeing violence, Eleanor Whitmore's complicated legacy lives on, a testament to the enduring power of confession, the necessity of truth, and the long, winding path towards something that might eventually resemble redemption.